Are Christians required to observe the Sabbath as Jews were required to do so under the Old Covenant? You know, the Sabbath issue, again, is one of those controversial topics in this church that's debated among Christians, those who are Sabbatarians who believe Christians must worship on the Sabbath. And also, it's certainly a topic of debate by those within the Messianic community. Again, what does the Scripture say about this? Are you and I required to worship on the Sabbath, the Jewish Sabbath, which would be Friday sundown to Saturday sundown? Well, again, let's be direct here. No, born-again believers in the church age are not required to worship on the Sabbath. You have to remember from the outset, the Sabbath was given exclusively to Israel, not the church. Exodus 31:16 through 17, and Ezekiel 20:20. In both passages, God says that He instituted the Sabbath with Israel as a covenantal sign between Him and the chosen people. Let me read Ezekiel 20:20. God says here, "And hallow my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you, that you may know that I am the Lord your God." Again, the context here tells us that the audience is Israel, not the church. God instituted the Sabbath for the Jewish people to keep for two reasons. Number one, to remind them that God created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and He completed that work and ceased from it on the seventh day. And secondly, to remind the Jewish people that God delivered them from slavery in Egypt. So are we then saying that Christians in the church age shouldn't worship on a certain day? No, not at all. In fact, Paul addresses this issue in Romans 14. Christian liberty allows us now to worship on any day of the week we choose to. Again, let me read what Paul says here. Romans 14, verse 5. "One man esteems one day above another, another esteems every day alike. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind." Verse 6, "He that regards the day regards it unto the Lord, and he that regards not the day to the Lord, he does not regard it." So in other words, if you want to choose to worship God on the Sabbath, that's perfectly fine. But the trouble comes when Christians or those in the Messianic movement try to forcibly impose that on other believers as a sign of spirituality and that they are in good standing with God because they're worshiping on the Sabbath. Again, Jesus fulfilled the Sabbath. His work now allows us to rest in Him for salvation. Hebrews 10:1 says that the things of the law foreshadow the good things to come in the New Covenant or the New Testament. Jesus is our Sabbath now. We rest and trust in His work on the cross for our salvation, not in a certain day of the week. Our Sabbath is the person of Yeshua, who said in Matthew 11:28 through 30, "Come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will" what? "I will give you Shabbat. I will give you rest." And in closing, the early church worshiped on the first day of the week. Acts 20, verse 7, and 1 Corinthians 16:2. Now, why did they do that? Well, if you go to all four Gospels and you read the resurrection accounts of Jesus, it says that He rose from the dead on the first day of the Jewish week, which would be Sunday. So that is the day that Christians have traditionally worshiped on, starting with the apostles in the book of Acts during the time of the early church. So remember, our worship is a person, not a certain day of the week. For those of us who are under the saving power of the new covenant, ratified by the finished work of Christ's cross, a work that we rest in, that rest that comes by faith in Him, according to what Hebrews chapter 4 says.